Have you noticed grocery stores with empty shelves lately? It's not your imagination. According to recent supply chain reports, we're facing the worst food shortages since 2020. Prices jumped 12% in just the last quarter, and experts predict it's about to get much worse. Global shipping disruptions have reached a 5-year high, with container costs tripling since December. Plus, extreme weather events damaged crops in key growing regions worldwide. The perfect storm is brewing, and it's hitting your local store right now. In this video, I'll reveal the 10 grocery items that will completely disappear from shelves before the end of March 2025. These aren't random predictions. They're based on current inventory levels, supplier warnings, and industry analyst reports from February. Stock up on these items now before it's too late, especially number 7. That one shocked even me. Let's dive in before these items vanish from your shopping cart forever. Number 1. Olive oil. Let's talk about olive oil first. If you've been shopping lately, you've probably noticed those olive oil prices climbing through the roof. There's a good reason for this. The Mediterranean region just experienced its worst olive harvest in decades. Spain and Italy, which produce over 60% of the world's olive oil, are facing a crisis. Recent reports from the International Olive Council show production dropped by a staggering 35% compared to last year. Why is this happening? Extreme heat waves last summer literally cooked olives on the branches. In some Spanish regions, temperatures hit 115 degrees Fahrenheit for weeks straight. Then came the unexpected autumn floods in Italy that damaged even more crops. One Italian farmer I read about in a recent news article said, "In 40 years, I've never seen anything like this. Our trees are stressed and producing fewer olives with less oil content." This isn't just about having less olive oil. It's about quality too. Extra virgin olive oil will be the hardest to find because it requires perfect olives. The bottles you do find will cost you. Prices have already jumped 45% since November, and industry experts predict another 30% increase by mid-March. What can you do? If you rely on olive oil for cooking, grab a few bottles now, especially if you prefer extra virgin. For alternatives, consider avocado oil for high-heat cooking or walnut oil for salad dressings. Grapeseed oil works well too, though its prices are starting to climb as people switch over. Remember, this shortage won't last forever, but we're looking at least 6-8 months before new harvests hit the market. Stock up now while you still can. Number 2. Cocoa products. Remember when a chocolate bar was just a cheap treat? Those days are gone. Cocoa prices have exploded to all-time highs, up 78% since last year, and it's about to get much worse. West Africa, where 70% of the world's cocoa comes from, is facing its worst growing season in decades. Ghana and Côte d'Ivoire reported a 30% drop in production just last month. The trees are struggling with a deadly combination of aging plants, extreme heat, and a fungal disease called swollen shoot virus that's destroying entire farms. What does this mean for your chocolate fix? Major companies like Hershey's and Nestle have already started shrinking their products while raising prices. That $2 chocolate bar from last year? It's now $3.50 and smaller. But here's what store managers aren't telling you. By mid-March, many chocolate products won't be available at any price. The hardest items to find will be high-quality dark chocolate, cocoa powder for baking, and those special seasonal treats for Easter. Companies are prioritizing their best sellers and cutting production on everything else. Just last week, a major supplier told retailers to expect only 40% of their normal chocolate inventory by month's end. One store manager I spoke with said they're already limiting purchases to 2 chocolate items per customer in some locations. Your best bet? Stock up now on your favorite chocolate bars, cocoa powder, and baking chips. They store well in cool, dry places for months. Or consider alternatives like carob products, which taste similar, but come from a completely different plant that isn't facing these shortages. The chocolate emergency is real, folks. Don't wait until the shelves are empty. Number 3. Certain citrus fruits. Let's talk about citrus fruits. Your morning orange juice? That might become a luxury by the end of March. Florida's citrus production hit a 90-year low this season after 3 hurricanes devastated the region's groves. According to the latest USDA report, Orange harvests are down 63% compared to last year. What's really concerning is that these storms hit during the critical flowering period, meaning recovery could take years, not months. It's not just Florida. Spain and Italy, which supply most of Europe's citrus, suffered through the hottest winter on record. Their lemon production has collapsed by nearly half. Those bright yellow Meyer lemons you love for baking, they'll be among the first to vanish. Importers are already prioritizing commercial customers over grocery stores, so restaurants might have lemons while your local market has empty bins. Grapefruit will be hit particularly hard. With 80% of the U.S. supply coming from affected regions, prices have already jumped 45% since January. One major grocery chain just warned their suppliers can't guarantee deliveries past mid-March. And it's not just about eating them fresh. It affects everything from marmalades to flavored seltzers that use citrus oils. Blood oranges and key limes are almost impossible to find already. I went to 3 stores last weekend and came back empty-handed. My neighbor, who works at the local supermarket, told me they're not even getting shipments anymore. The few that do arrive are often damaged or underripe because distributors are rushing them to market before they're ready. The citrus crisis goes deeper than just fruit scarcity. These shortages are hitting vitamin C supplement production too. Manufacturers use citrus byproducts for natural vitamin C, and they're scrambling to find alternatives. If you rely on these supplements, you might want to stock up now before those prices skyrocket too. The situation isn't the same everywhere, though. If you live in California or Texas, you might see some local citrus hanging around longer, but expect to pay triple what you paid last year. And those tiny mandarin oranges that kids love? The latest industry newsletter says supplies will dry up completely by the 3rd week of March. School lunch programs are already being notified to find alternatives for the spring semester. What most people don't realize is that citrus shortages create a domino effect. When consumers can't find oranges, they buy more apples and berries, creating pressure on those supplies too. We're already seeing this play out in real time with berry prices climbing 30% in just the last 3 weeks. Your best bet right now is to buy extra and freeze the juice. You can also stock up on frozen concentrate while it's still on shelves. Some people I know are even learning to preserve whole citrus by salt curing or dehydrating them. Trust me, you'll thank yourself when everyone else is paying $15 for a single bag of oranges next month. I've already filled a drawer in my freezer with zest from organic lemons. That stuff is liquid gold for cooking when you can't find fresh. Number 4. Coffee. Let's talk about coffee. That morning cup that gets millions of us through the day. Bad news, coffee lovers. Your daily ritual is in serious trouble. Recent reports from the International Coffee Organization show global coffee production has hit its lowest point in 8 years. Brazilian farms, which supply 40% of the world's coffee, are struggling with the worst drought in decades. Satellite imagery from January shows moisture levels in key growing regions at critical lows. Some farmers are reporting soil conditions so dry that young coffee plants aren't surviving at all, which means this shortage could extend well beyond 2025. It's not just Brazil. Colombia's coffee farmers faced devastating floods last month, destroying nearly 30% of their crops. And in Vietnam, labor shortages mean beans are literally rotting on the trees. Local agricultural officials say they're short about 40,000 workers this season alone. The pandemic created a massive shift in the labor market that's still affecting farming regions worldwide. Climate change is hitting coffee particularly hard. Coffee plants are incredibly sensitive to temperature changes. Even a 1-2-degree increase can dramatically affect yield and quality. A research study published last month found that 60% of wild coffee species are now facing extinction due to changing climate patterns. This isn't just bad for your morning cup. It's devastating for the 125 million people worldwide who depend on coffee for their livelihood. What does this mean for you? Major retailers have already started limiting purchases to 2 bags per customer. Starbucks just announced price increases averaging 18% starting next week. And those specialty beans from your favorite local roaster, they're getting the hardest hit. Small roasters can't compete with the purchasing power of major corporations when supplies get tight. The shortage is hitting Arabica beans first. That's a smoother, less bitter coffee most people prefer. Experts predict by mid-March, many grocery stores will be completely out of premium coffee options. Robusta beans, which have a stronger, more bitter taste, might still be available but at double their normal price. Even instant coffee, which typically uses lower grade beans, is expected to see significant price jumps by early April. If you're a coffee drinker, grab your favorite beans now and store them in your freezer. They'll stay fresh for months. Just make sure to keep them in an airtight container to prevent moisture damage. Or consider switching to tea, at least temporarily. Tea production hasn't been hit nearly as hard this year. Just don't wait until your last bag is empty, because restocking won't be an option. And if you're really desperate, chicory root has historically been used as a coffee alternative during shortages. It's worth stocking some just in case. Number 5. Certain seafood options. Let's talk seafood. And hate to be the bearer of bad news, but your fish tacos might be in serious trouble. The National Oceanic Agency just reported the strictest seasonal fishing restrictions in 15 years. These aren't just routine regulations. They're emergency measures to prevent the complete collapse of certain fish populations. Scientists monitoring ocean temperatures found alarming changes in migration patterns, pushing many species into unfamiliar territories where traditional fishing methods can't reach them. Wild-caught salmon is first on the chopping block. Alaska's fisheries announced a 60% reduction in permits for March, citing dangerously low population counts. Those beautiful pink fillets you love? Expect them to vanish from seafood counters by mid-month. What's really concerning is that this isn't just a temporary blip. Salmon have faced consecutive years of declining spawning numbers. The Columbia River Basin recorded its lowest salmon return in 3 decades, with only 38% of expected fish making it back to breeding grounds. That's why prices jumped nearly 30% in February alone, and stores are already limiting purchases to 2 packages per customer in some regions. It gets worse for shrimp lovers. The Gulf Coast is facing a perfect storm of problems. Water temperatures rose 3 degrees above normal this winter, disrupting breeding patterns. Plus, that massive shipping container spill off Louisiana in January contaminated key harvesting areas. The result? Shrimp prices have already jumped 40% since February, and suppliers can't keep up with demand. I spoke with a restaurant owner in New Orleans who told me her supplier warned her to expect shrimp the size of your thumbnail by April. IFE can get them at all. The smaller sizes are all that's left as larger. Premium shrimp become nearly impossible to source. But here's what really concerns seafood markets. Crab. The Pacific Northwest crabbing season just got cut short by 6 weeks. Warming ocean temperatures pushed crabs into deeper, harder-to-reach waters. My buddy who runs a seafood shop told me he's already been warned to expect 0 Dungeness crab shipments after March 15th. The commercial catch this year is down 62% from historical averages, making this beloved seafood essentially unobtainable for the average consumer by month's end. One Seattle fisherman described the situation as the worst I've seen in my 22 years pulling pots. Those fancy lobster rolls won't fare much better. Maine's lobster industry is struggling with new trap limits and shortened seasons to protect declining populations. Industry insiders predict lobster could hit $45 per pound by late March. You can find it at all. The warming Gulf of Maine has forced lobsters to migrate northward, and Canadian waters are now seeing record catches while Maine fishermen struggle. This international complication adds tariffs and transportation costs to already expensive seafood, putting it out of reach for many consumers. What can you actually still buy? Farm-raised tilapia and catfish should remain steady. These controlled environments aren't affected by ocean changes, though feed costs are driving up prices about 10 to 15%. Frozen seafood options will stick around longer, but expect those prices to climb too as people scramble for alternatives. Your best bet? If seafood is a staple in your home, consider stocking your freezer now while supplies last. One clever hack. Check international grocery stores, which often source from different supply chains than major supermarkets and might still have inventory when bigger chains run out. Remember, seafood freezes surprisingly well. Properly wrapped fish can last 4-6 months without losing quality. Number 6. Rice varieties. Why your favorite rice might vanish. Soon imagine stepping into your usual grocery store, heading straight for your favorite bag of jasmine or basmati rice, only to find an empty shelf. A small sign reads, "Temporarily out of stock." You glance around in confusion. Rice, a staple food for billions, suddenly isn't as easy to get as it used to be. You might even think, did I miss something? Why is rice becoming harder to find? Well, you're not imagining it. The world is experiencing one of the most significant rice shortages in decades, and it's impacting everything from grocery store shelves to the cost of your favorite restaurant meals. But what's causing this crisis? And more importantly, what can you do about it? Rice is the staple food for over half of the world's population, yet in the past few years, a combination of factors has triggered a supply crunch that has driven prices to their highest levels in nearly 15 years. In 2023, the global rice shortfall reached 8.5 million metric tons, the biggest deficit since 2004. For comparison, that's like the entire population of the United States losing access to rice for a year. So, what's causing this crisis? A perfect storm of climate change, extreme weather events, government export restrictions, and supply chain disruptions has made it harder than ever for countries to grow, store, and trade rice. In some regions, floods have wiped out entire harvests, while in others, heat waves and droughts have reduced yields by 30% or more. Farmers who rely on seasonal rains are finding their crops struggling to survive in harsher conditions, leading to massive supply shortages. As rice supplies shrink, major rice-producing countries are hoarding their stockpiles to protect their own people. The biggest example? India, the world's largest rice exporter, has restricted exports multiple times since 2022 to stabilize its domestic food prices. This sent shockwaves through global markets. Back in July 2023, India banned the export of non-basmati white rice, causing a panic in countries that rely on Indian rice imports, like the Philippines, Indonesia, and even parts of the US. As a result, rice prices surged by as much as 15 to 20% overnight. The ban was partially lifted in September 2024, but with one major catch. India set a minimum export price for rice, making it far more expensive than before. This means many countries are struggling to afford the imports they used to rely on. Tunisia, for example, has been scrambling to secure 1 million tons of rice from India to ensure its food security, and many African nations are also facing price shocks due to these trade policies. Even the US has been indirectly affected, with prices rising at major grocery chains and supply becoming less predictable. ITH rice varieties are most at risk. All rice is disappearing at the same rate. Some varieties are under more pressure than others. Here's what's at risk: Smine and Basmati rice. These premium varieties come mainly from Thailand, Vietnam, Pakistan, and India. With stricter export rules, they are becoming harder to find and more expensive. Calrose rice. A favorite in the US, this short-grain rice mainly comes from California. However, due to water shortages and droughts, American rice production has been shrinking. Brown rice. Since brown rice has a shorter shelf life than white rice, due to its natural oils, many producers are prioritizing white rice over brown, leading to scarcity in some regions. Meanwhile, in Japan, traditional rice varieties are also facing severe challenges due to extreme heat. The Japanese government is now promoting heat-resistant rice strains to prevent future shortages. In the long run, climate change is expected to cut global rice yields by up to 15% by 2050 unless drastic action is taken. So, what can you do as a consumer? First, be prepared for price increases. If you rely on rice as a staple in your home, it may be a good idea to stock up on non-perishable varieties while they are still reasonably priced. Consider diversifying your pantry with other grains like quinoa, barley, or couscous, which are less affected by these supply chain disruptions. Other smart move? Support local and sustainable farming practices. Rice shortages aren't just about supply and demand, they're also about sustainability. Governments and farmers need to invest in water-efficient rice growing techniques and heat-resistant crop varieties to ensure long-term stability. Nail thought. This rice crisis isn't just a passing trend. It's a warning sign of deeper food security issues. The next time you see a higher price tag on your favorite bag of rice, you'll know why. And if this shortage continues to grow, we could be facing an era where something as basic as rice becomes a luxury item. You notice changes in rice availability or prices in your area? Drop a comment below and let's talk about it. Number 7. Fresh berries. Remember last March when you could grab a pack of strawberries for about $3.99? Those days are gone. Fresh berries are about to become the luxury item of spring 2025, and here's why. Recent climate data shows unprecedented temperature fluctuations across major berry-growing regions. California's berry belt experienced its driest winter in 15 years, with rainfall 42% below average. Meanwhile, Florida's early berries faced 3 unexpected frost events in January alone, destroying nearly 30% of early crops. But it gets worse. The berry disaster isn't just a U.S. problem. Mexico's berry exports, IHH normally fill our March gap, down a staggering 35%, according to the latest agricultural reports. Labor shortages have left thousands of acres unharvested, with workers moving to higher-paying industries. What does this mean for your shopping cart? Strawberries will likely hit $8.99 per pound by mid-March. You can find them at all. Blueberries aren't faring any better, with prices expected to reach $7.50 for a tiny 6-ounce container. And those fancy organic raspberries? Grocery buyers are already warning they'll simply stop ordering them when wholesale prices cross the profitability threshold. One insider at a major grocery chain told me they're already planning to reduce berry shelf space by 40% for March and April. They'll fill that space with more stable produce options instead. Your best bet? Head to the freezer section now. Frozen berries are still reflecting last season's pricing, and they're nutritionally comparable to fresh. Stock up while you can. Frozen varieties will see price hikes once suppliers deplete current inventory. Some shoppers are even buying fresh berries now and freezing them at home. Smart move considering what's coming. If you absolutely need fresh berries, try farmers markets or local farms that might have small greenhouse operations. You'll pay a premium, but at least you'll find something when mainstream grocers have empty shelves. Number 8. Specialty flowers. Why they're disappearing from shelves. Picture this. You're all set to bake your favorite gluten-free bread or that almond flour banana bread everyone raves about. You pull out your shopping list, head to the grocery store, and bam, the specialty flour section is practically wiped out. No almond flour, coconut flour is overpriced, and even oat flour is looking scarce. Sound familiar? You're not alone. Specialty flours are vanishing from store shelves, and if you rely on them, you might want to start stocking up. But why is this happening? Let's start with the elephant in the room, supply chain issues. We've been hearing about supply chain disruptions for years now, first with the pandemic, then global shipping delays, and now extreme weather. But what does this have to do with flour? A lot. Specialty flours rely on specific raw ingredients that are sourced globally. Almond flour, for instance, depends heavily on almond production in California, which has been hit by severe droughts. Coconut flour, imported from tropical regions where climate changes, rising costs, and transportation delays have led to unpredictable supply. The problem isn't just about getting these ingredients, it's about getting them to your local store in time, at a price that won't make you wince. On top of that, wheat shortages are pushing up the cost of all flour-based products, including specialty flours. With wheat prices fluctuating due to poor harvests in key regions like the US and Ukraine, alternative flours, once considered niche, are now in even higher demand. This means fewer supplies to go around and, you guessed it, higher prices. Let's talk about demand. Specialty flours used to be for the select few, those with gluten intolerances, keto followers, or paleo enthusiasts. But in recent years, the health food movement has exploded. More people than ever are avoiding traditional wheat flour in favor of alternatives that are grain-free, high in protein, or simply more nutritious. Study from the business research company shows that the global specialty flour market is expected to hit $13.25 billion in 2025, growing at 10.2% annually. That's huge growth. But here's the kicker. Production isn't growing at the same speed. This means more people want specialty flours than there are products available, making shortages inevitable. At flour, once considered a budget-friendly alternative, has surged in popularity due to its mild flavor and gluten-free status. But increased demand means suppliers can't keep up. The same goes for cassava and chickpea flour, which have become baking staples in many plant-based and gluten-free diets. When demand outstrips supply, even big brands struggle to keep up. If you're wondering which specialty flours are the hardest to find right now, here's a quick breakdown. Almond flour. Odds in California have severely impacted almond production, making this flour more expensive and harder to find. Coconut flour. Ports from tropical regions have slowed down due to rising costs in transportation and global shipping issues. Oat flour. Increased demand from gluten-free and clean-eating trends has led to limited availability. Chickpea and cassava flour. Owing popularity in plant-based diets has driven up demand beyond what suppliers anticipated. And here's something you might not have expected. Even matcha powder, used in trendy baking recipes, has faced recent shortages, meaning your matcha-flavored cookies or lattes might soon become a rare treat. Oh, what's the solution? If you rely on specialty flours, here's how to stay ahead of the shortage. Buy in bulk when possible. You find your go-to flour in stock, grab an extra bag or two. Many flours store well if kept in an airtight container. Consider substitutes. You can't find almond flour? Try hazelnut or sunflower seed flour. No oat flour? Blend rolled oats into a fine powder at home. Look for local suppliers. Instead of relying on big grocery chains, check out local mills or farmers markets for alternative options. Order online. Meantime, online retailers have stock even when local stores don't, so keep an eye out for deals. Final thoughts. Specialty flours, the new grocery gold? While traditional flour has always been a kitchen staple, specialty flours are becoming just as valuable and just as hard to find. With supply chain disruptions, unpredictable harvests, and booming demand, we're likely to see shortages continue throughout 2024 and beyond. If you're an avid baker or follow a diet that depends on these flours, now might be the time to get strategic with your pantry stock. Have you noticed these shortages in your area? What's your go-to specialty flour and how are you adapting? Drop a comment below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Number 9. Certain meat cuts. Next up is something that'll hit hard if you're planning any special meals. Certain meat cuts are vanishing fast. Remember when you could walk into any store and grab whatever cut you wanted? Those days are ending. Meat processing costs have jumped 17% since January, and it's crushing smaller processors. 3 major facilities in the Midwest shut down last month alone. The biggest problem? Labor shortages. Processing plants are operating at just 72% capacity because they can't find enough workers. That's down from 88% last year. What's disappearing first? Prime ribeye steaks and beef tenderloin will be nearly impossible to find. Current inventory is down 43% compared to this time last year. If you're planning a special dinner, buy and freeze these cuts now. Pork shoulder is another casualty. It's become incredibly popular for smoking and slow cooking, but supply can't keep up with demand. Warehouse stocks dropped by over half in just 8 weeks. Surprisingly, chicken wings are facing shortages too. With March Madness and spring gatherings coming up, demand is skyrocketing while production struggles. Industry analysts predict prices will double by mid-March if things don't improve. Your best bet? Consider less popular cuts like chuck roast, pork loin, or chicken thighs. They're more readily available and often cheaper. Or visit local butchers who source directly from nearby farms. They're seeing smaller disruptions than major supply chains. Don't say I didn't warn you when you're staring at empty meat cases next month. The time to act is now. Number 10. Dairy alternatives. Let's talk about dairy alternatives. They're flying off shelves, and production just can't keep up. Remember when oat milk was everywhere? Those days are ending fast. Several major plant-based milk producers reported manufacturing facility shutdowns in January due to equipment shortages. Parts needed for specialized processing machines are back-ordered until June, and that's if shipping improves. Almond milk is hit hardest. California's drought devastated almond crops, with yields down 31% compared to last year. Farmers are warning that the February harvest was the worst in a decade. One producer told Bloomberg, "We're allocating what little we have to our biggest customers first." Oat milk isn't safe either. 3 of the 5 largest oat milk brands have already announced they're pausing production of certain flavors to focus on their basic varieties. The organic versions? Those will disappear first, and it's not just milk alternatives. Plant-based yogurts and cheeses are vanishing too. The specialized cultures needed for fermentation are in critically short supply after a key European supplier faced contamination issues. What's driving this? Demand is absolutely exploding. Plant-based dairy sales jumped 27% in the last quarter alone, while production capacity only grew by 8%. The math just doesn't work. If you depend on these products, especially for allergies or dietary needs, stock up now while you still can. Grab shelf-stable versions when possible, and maybe consider learning to make your own oat milk. It's easier than you think, and you'll thank me in April when store shelves are empty. Well, there you have it. These 10 grocery items are already vanishing from stores and will be completely gone by the end of March. From olive oil to cocoa, citrus to coffee, and those dairy alternatives that so many depend on. I'm not telling you this to panic you. I'm sharing it so you can prepare. Stock up smartly on these essentials now, especially if they're staples in your household. Consider alternatives where possible. This might be the perfect time to try new recipes or brands you haven't considered before. The good news? These shortages won't last forever, but being prepared will save you stress, time, and money in the coming months. If this information helped you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more practical advice on navigating today's challenging consumer landscape. Drop a comment below with any items you've already noticed disappearing in your area. Stay prepared, shop smart, and I'll see you in the next video.